It all began with a seemingly innocent dinner, a cozy reunion with my wife's college friends. The evening was filled with laughter and nostalgia, but beneath the surface, something felt off. As we reminisced about the past, my wife casually mentioned that we had known each other since high school, but she didn't clarify that we were already dating back then. One of her old roommates, unaware of the full story, remarked how remarkable it was that we had met so young, survived our wild college years, and still ended up together. I chuckled along, jokingly saying I wasn't sure if my wife had been as wild as I had been. That's when the room fell silent. The roommates started to share a story, but my wife abruptly cut her off, her face flushed with discomfort. Her reaction sent a chill down my spine. Something wasn't right. I pressed further, clarifying that we had been dating since high school and stayed together throughout her entire college experience. The room grew tense and the rest of the evening was awkwardly quiet. As we left, another roommate pulled me aside, her voice trembling as she urged me to have an honest conversation with my wife about what really happened during her college years. That night, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. I confronted my wife, but she brushed it off, dismissing it as no big deal. Her evasiveness only deepened my suspicion. Little did I know, this was the beginning of a devastating revelation that would shatter the foundation of our 20-year marriage. The truth, as I would soon discover, was far more painful than I could have ever imagined. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer. After that tense dinner and the cryptic warning from my wife's roommate, I knew I couldn't let it go. The next day I confronted my wife again, this time with a firm resolve. She was visibly anxious, her usual confidence crumbling as she finally admitted the unthinkable. During those 2 long-distance years in college, she had slept with at least 10 different men. My stomach churned as she tried to downplay it, claiming it wasn't a big deal because we were young and she didn't think our high school romance would last. But what shattered me even more was the revelation that some of these men were people she had introduced to me as friends. I had shaken their hands, shared laughs with them, and even trusted them all while they had been intimate with my wife behind my back. One of them, she confessed, was still in our lives, married to a mutual friend from college. The betrayal was staggering, a knife twisting deeper with every word she spoke. I felt a storm of emotions, rage, heartbreak, and a profound sense of humiliation. How could she have lied to me for over 2 decades? How could she have looked me in the eye all these years, knowing what she had done? Her dismissive attitude only made it worse. She insisted it was normal behavior for a long-distance relationship, as if that somehow justified her actions. But for me, it wasn't just about the infidelity, it was the years of deceit, the disrespect, and the sheer audacity of maintaining friendships with these men right under my nose. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I told her I wanted a divorce. Her attempts to minimize her actions and gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting only solidified my resolve. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a calculated betrayal that had poisoned the foundation of our marriage. I knew I could never trust her again, and I refused to spend the rest of my life living a lie. Her reaction to my pain was almost as devastating as the betrayal itself. When I confronted her about the infidelity, she didn't break down in tears or beg for forgiveness. Instead, she shrugged it off, as if I were overreacting to something trivial. It was just college, she said, her tone dismissive. Everyone does it in long-distance relationships. It didn't mean anything. Her words cut deeper than I expected. How could she be so casual about something that had shattered my world? She even had the audacity to suggest that I was the one being unreasonable, that I was holding her to an unrealistic standard. Her lack of remorse was infuriating. It wasn't until I started the divorce paperwork that her demeanor shifted. Suddenly, she was anxious, defensive, and even angry. She accused me of throwing away our 20-year marriage over ancient history, as she called it. But her sudden concern wasn't about saving our relationship, it was about damage control. She didn't want to lose the life we had built together, but she still refused to take full responsibility for her actions. Even in therapy, she tried to rationalize her behavior, claiming that since those encounters weren't romantic, they didn't count as real betrayal. It was only when she realized I was serious about ending the marriage that she showed a flicker of regret, but even then it felt hollow. Her remorse wasn't about hurting me. It was about the consequences she now faced. The woman I had loved and trusted for 2 decades had become a stranger, someone who could look me in the eye and minimize the pain she had caused. Her dismissive attitude and refusal to acknowledge the gravity of her actions only confirmed what I already knew. Our marriage was beyond repair. The emotional toll of her betrayal was unbearable. After she admitted to sleeping with multiple men during those 2 long-distance years, I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The woman I had loved since high school, the person I trusted more than anyone, had been living a double life for decades. It wasn't just the physical infidelity that destroyed me, it was the lies, the deceit, and the sheer disrespect. She'd introduced some of these men to me as friends, and I had welcomed them into our lives completely unaware of the truth. The thought of her laughing and joking with them, all while hiding her secrets, made my blood boil. I couldn't stop replaying every memory, every moment, wondering how much of our life together had been built on lies. The anger was overwhelming, but it was the sadness that cut the deepest. I had given her my heart, my trust, and my loyalty, only to realize that she had never truly valued it. Her dismissive attitude when I confronted her only added salt to the wound. She acted like it was no big deal, as if my pain was an overreaction. But for me, it wasn't just about the cheating, it was about the years of deception. The way she had manipulated me into believing we had something real. I felt like a fool, humiliated and broken. Every night I lay awake, haunted by the images of her with other men, wondering how she could have betrayed me so completely. The trust was gone, and with it, the love I once felt. I knew I could never look at her the same way again. This wasn't just a betrayal of our marriage. It was a betrayal of everything I believed in. And no matter how much she tried to downplay it, I knew I could never forgive her. The pain was too deep, the scars too permanent. When I shared the truth with our families, the reactions were mixed but overwhelmingly leaned toward reconciliation. Both her family and mine urged me to forgive her, insisting that everyone makes mistakes and that our 20-year marriage was too valuable to throw away. They reminded me of the life we had built together, the children we raised, and the love we once shared. But their words felt hollow, almost dismissive of the pain I was carrying. How could they expect me to simply move past decades of lies and betrayal? My wife's family in particular downplayed her actions, framing them as youthful indiscretions that shouldn't define our present. Even my own parents, who had always been my biggest supporters, suggested I consider therapy instead of divorce. But their pleas only deepened my resolve. This wasn't just about a few mistakes, it was about a pattern of deceit that had spanned years. I couldn't ignore the fact that she had not only cheated but had also maintained relationships with those men, even introducing them to me as friends. The betrayal was too profound, the trust too shattered. I knew I couldn't stay in a marriage where my feelings were invalidated and my self-respect was compromised. Despite their well-meaning advice, I stood firm in my decision. Some lines once crossed can never be uncrossed. Telling our children about the divorce was one of the hardest moments of my life. Our 17-year-old son and 19-year-old daughter had always seen us as a loving, united couple, and shattering that image felt like a betrayal in itself. We sat them down together, and I could see the confusion and fear in their eyes as I explained that our marriage was ending. My wife, to her credit, took responsibility for her actions. She admitted to them that she had been unfaithful during her college years, a revelation that left our daughter visibly shaken. Our son, on the other hand, was furious. He couldn't understand how she could have hidden something so significant for so long. The tension in the room was palpable, and I felt a mix of guilt and relief as the truth finally came out. I reassured them that despite the divorce, both of us would always be there for them. But the damage was done. Our daughter, who had already been hurt by past relationships, seemed to lose a bit of her trust and love altogether. Our son, meanwhile, grew distant from his mother, his anger simmering beneath the surface. It broke my heart to see our family unraveling, but I knew that honesty, no matter how painful, was the only way forward. This wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a new, uncertain chapter for all of us. The divorce process, surprisingly, was less chaotic than I had anticipated. After the initial storm of emotions, my wife and I managed to approach the legal proceedings with a sense of pragmatism. We agreed to an uncontested divorce, dividing our assets fairly and without unnecessary conflict. She kept the house, a place she had always loved, while I took my share of the equity and moved into a new home that felt like a fresh start. We split our retirement funds and investments equally, and even the division of personal belongings was relatively smooth, thanks to the meticulous records we had kept over the years. What mattered most, though, was our commitment to co-parenting our children. Despite the betrayal that had torn us apart, we both understood that our kids needed stability and support. We attended counseling sessions together, not to salvage our marriage, but to ensure we could communicate effectively and create a healthy environment for our son and daughter. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension and lingering resentment, but we pushed through for the sake of our family. In the end, the divorce was finalized without drama, a quiet conclusion to a marriage that had once been filled with love but was ultimately destroyed by lies. It was a bittersweet ending, but one that allowed us both to move forward with our lives. Life after the divorce was a mix of relief and rediscovery. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom, as if a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I moved into a new house, a place that was entirely mine, and traded in my old minivan for a sleek Lexus, a small but symbolic step toward reclaiming my identity. The kids adjusted surprisingly well, spending most of their time with me as we navigated this new chapter together. My 17-year-old son, still grappling with his anger toward his mother, found solace in our shared space, while my 19-year-old daughter began to open up about her own struggles with trust and relationships. As for me, I started to dip my toes back into the dating world. A woman from work, someone I had always admired for her wit and intelligence, asked me out for coffee. Though I wasn't ready to jump into anything serious, her invitation was a gentle reminder that there was life beyond the pain of the past. I focused on healing, attending therapy sessions to process the betrayal and rebuild my self-esteem. The journey wasn't easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I was no longer defined by the lies of my marriage, but by the strength it took to walk away and start anew. This entire ordeal taught me the importance of honesty and self-respect in any relationship. Looking back, I realized that the cracks in our marriage began long before I discovered the truth. The lack of transparency, the unspoken resentments, and the willingness to sweep things under the rug had created a foundation built on sand. I learned that love alone isn't enough to sustain a relationship. It requires trust, respect, and open communication. The betrayal forced me to confront my own boundaries and recognize that some actions are unforgivable, no matter how much history you share. I also learned the value of standing up for myself, even when others tried to minimize my pain. This experience reshaped my understanding of what it means to love and be loved, and it's a lesson I'll carry into every relationship moving forward. As I look ahead, I feel a cautious optimism. The divorce, while painful, has given me a chance to rebuild my life on my own terms. My children, though still processing the changes, have shown remarkable resilience, and I'm confident we'll emerge stronger as a family. I've started to explore new opportunities, both personally and professionally, and even the prospect of dating again feels less daunting. Therapy has been instrumental in helping me heal, and I'm committed to continuing that journey. While I don't know what the future holds, I'm determined to create a life filled with authenticity and joy. The scars of betrayal will always be there, but they no longer define me. Instead, they serve as a reminder of my strength and my ability to rise above even the deepest pain. The road ahead is uncertain, but for the first time in years, I feel ready to face it head on.